So I believe that there is once again, we are now at the utilitarian versus the deontological moral philosophy of, I think we as a country, if we are looking at another country driving people to mass suicide in any degree, we have to stop and say, you are putting our entire trade agreements at risk because of those squalor conditions you have put these people in that's resulting in mass suicide.
The idea that the United States does anything to encourage assimilation in 2025 is absolutely ridiculous.
By the second or third generation, immigrants absolutely assimilate in America.
They don't assimilate to become American by the second or third generation, but there are policies that the United States could have that would encourage assimilation, but the United States chooses not to have those policies. Now, I do think I'm definitely less nationalist than Elijah would be.
You're a fascist. You're an anti-communist. You said that.
What?
You said did you say you're an anti-communist or you're a fascist?
I am not a fascist.
But isn't that what that is?
No, it's not, because liberalism is also anti-communist.
Okay, that shocked me when you said that. I was like, this guy's a fascist.
No, I'm not a fascist.
I was like, Elon's. You're feeling proud of your.
No, I'm not
Elon?
a fascist. But
No, I'm joking.
The point is, you're making me lose my train of thought.
Sorry.
The idea that the United States encourages assimilation, that is fallacious nowadays. The United States does not encourage assimilation. I do think that there are things the government could do. One of them would be simply just having the United States say, look, in America we speak English, and the government doesn't use any forms that are in any other language aside from English. Because if you don't have a common language, you certainly aren't going to be able to have a common ideology. I do think that the race is less important than the ideology. If you want to go ahead and say you come from a communist country and you're not a communist, come on in. But if you are a communist, we should say, no, you can't come into the United States. If you have an ideology that is at odds with the United States, we should absolutely kick people, reject people based on that.
Should we suspend trade with any country that has something like this happen? 150 Chinese workers at Foxconn threaten to commit suicide by leaping from the factory in protest of their working conditions. Foxconn installs anti-jumping nets. Here's a photo of the anti-suicide nets. Is this okay for free trade? I mean, graph go up?
I remember this happened.
Hang on.
Let me answer this question. So you just showed one terrible story from a country with billions of people and asked me if we should shut down trade with a whole country based on one anecdotal story from 2010 about one company in horrific conditions. By that logic,
Let's pause
sorry.
No. I'm going to talk over you if you try to reframe the argument. I said, from this story, should we have shut down trade with China over, at this time, this specific incident occurring?
A whole country.
Yes.
Over one
It's
company.
a simple yes or no question.
No, we shouldn't.
Okay. So I believe that there is once again, we are now at the utilitarian versus the deontological moral philosophy of, I think we as a country, if we are looking at another country driving people to mass suicide in any degree, we have to stop and say, you are putting our entire trade agreements at risk because of those squalor conditions you have put these people in that's resulting in mass suicide. If but one person is living as a slave, I have a problem with that and don't see why graph go up, why we should make money in any way off of a foreign country that is doing something like this.
So one person living as a slave in a country of billions of people, what you just said, we should write off trade with the whole country.
It's really simple, actually. When Donald Trump calls him on the phone and says, you will right now get that man freed and declare it. Otherwise, we will put a 30% tariff on all your goods. Guess what that country does? It frees that slave. You are saying you accept a certain degree of mass suicide so that your graph go up.
That is not what I'm saying.
So you think we should
maybe we should sanction trade with Foxconn. Maybe we should restrict trade in that industry. Maybe that specific region of China you suspend. It's horrible. It's evil. China's evil. I don't know what you're trying to make me say about
we should not do trade
with anything with China. Okay, you explain that to Americans when every single thing they rely on and buy gets more expensive after years of inflation under Biden.
I will.
You come in, MAGA comes in and says, all right, you know what? You guys elected us because everything's so unaffordable. Fuck it.
I will stand on top of a mountain.
Goes up.
I will stand on top of a mountain and say, and directly into the eyes, I will do it right now. To every voter, I will look into the eyes of every voter right now and say, Brad is evil and accepts human sacrifice so that you can have a cheap iPhone. And if you're willing to buy a cheap iPhone, knowing that people are committing mass suicide, you stand along with them.
So I'm
and I will
evil
stand on the
because
other
I
side.
disagree with you about trade policy?
Because you think there's an acceptable degree of mass suicide and concentration camps so that your economy can improve.
I don't think that. You're shadow boxing with a caricature.
Should we threaten to sever trade with China over the Uyghur concentration camps, the forced abortions of the Uyghur Muslim Chinese? Or should we just say, well, we're doing business with them?
The world is a terrible place. If we were going to cut off trade with every country that's violating human rights in different ways, we couldn't trade with many countries, and most countries couldn't trade with us.
That's right. So if they want the American dream, and if they want our business, they better stop raping Uyghur Muslim women and then force them to get abortions.
You think the whole world's going to conform to an upstanding moral citizenship that
maybe
we
not
put on them? Because
I don't know what I can
our
see
toys
clearly
and go
that you
home.
have no moral standards.
I do have moral standards.
Yeah, that a certain
I think
amount of rape of Uyghur Muslims and forced abortion is acceptable, so that our economy can trade.
No, I don't think that's acceptable.
And why aren't we putting pressure on China to stop it?
Are we going to put pressure on every country that does something wrong?
Does China do business with us?
Cut off our economy.
Does China buy from us?
We also buy from them.
Does China buy from us? Yes or no?
Yes.
And so they need things from us, right? And so we have leverage in a negotiation to say, stop. They are raping Uyghur Muslim women in China and then forcing them to get abortions. That is currently going on.
It's terrible. It's evil.
Absolutely. So how about Donald Trump says, if we find out that you continued this process, we are going to put a 30% tariff on all goods and stop selling to you.
And what happens when they don't stop?
Then we shut down trade because
we make Americans impoverished to protest their morality.
You know what? You're right. I guess it's okay that they're being raped because some people get cheap goods.
Honestly, if I didn't get an action button on my new iPhone 16, I might have actually died. So you make a good point. That's my level of poverty would have been increased. Now, what we're getting, by the way, is we're getting a super cheapening of our culture. And I think what matters to me the most, which might be the greatest point of contention here, is that when you said about free trade, about how important it is, to me, free trade is one of the least of our value sets. The core identity is, why are we trading in the first place? We're trading in the first place to guarantee the success of our current lives, our offspring, and future generations. We are to build a strong nation state, right? Right now, we are operating in the West like we are on Tatooine in America. The world is just a bunch of planets, and everyone has a trading outpost, and you go there, and there's aliens of all shapes and sizes, and somehow there's some shadow government, with the stormtroopers and the Empire sort of managing it all. In reality, that's not how things work. That is, our founding fathers created this country to be a European nation that was free from tyranny, that was free from totalitarian overreach from the crown, that they would have representation, and that it would, like from the days they said of Moses, the days of Noah, this would be like a rebirth, and a new nation would form, and a new people of European descent. Over time, legally, again, my personal opinions aside, after wars were fought, like in 1870, people came together and said, maybe seeing, black people as 3/5 of value, may align with the founding fathers, but we're going to redefine that. We're going to give them, their ability to vote and to have full legal citizenship.
Hold on. The South argued it would be really bad for their economy if they stopped slavery.
This is what I'm trying to say. Is that a lot of this stuff was an economic battle to begin with? That's exactly where I was going. Was that there was an economic?
That's actually not true. Slavery hurt the American economy.
There was an economic battle here. Look, there was an economic battle here, and at some point, whether you're in the comments and you're a racist and you hate that slavery ended, or you're a radical progressive and that's your favorite time in history, I don't care where you fall on the political spectrum. The point was, there was an economic disagreement, and that economic disagreement in some ways was about the identity of specific regions. That did spark a war. I'm not going down Civil War history, chat. We're not doing this. I'm just saying this did. And then there was a redefinition of what? Was there an immediate economic benefit per se, you might argue, of making, slaves citizens, or at least giving them rights? Maybe. But yes. Well, not for everyone. The whole point was that there was a moral direction decided by a nation to go outside of just purely economics. It was like the ethos of who we are. And so that was added. That being said, the original founders' principles of what they wanted this country to be didn't change. And I think people don't realize that just because, like, for instance, if I became a Roman citizen, which even Paul in the Bible, I believe he did, he became a citizen, he doesn't become Latin. He doesn't become what we'd call modern day Italian. He doesn't become a Roman. He's still a Jew, right? And that's what he says. Like, I'm a citizen, but at the same time, I'm still a Jew like you, but I also am a citizen. Our country, from the original founding of being a European colony, having this ethos, securing our offspring, creating this free state, realized along the way, or at least came together and decided they got some things wrong about the value of other races, human life, and things in our country. And we've grafted people in legally, like right there, 1870. Fast forward this, and we realize, you know what? Actually, besides our benevolence, I always said that, I guess you use the R word, so I will too. The greatest threat against right now Protestant Christian Americanism is that people have raped our benevolence. Is that, people went, okay, well, we shouldn't be treating black people like they're not human. We should give them citizenship, and we'll even fight to make sure they have rights. And at the same time in this, people are like, okay, so that means the illegals can come over at open border and have anchor babies. We got to a point now where it's so corrupt and so distrusted that we're losing our identity of who we are, okay? We haven't even dealt with the racial tensions between whites and black people substantially in a way that's even made progress, okay? A lot of black people I know hate white people. A lot of white people do not really like black people, and they have their reasons. We have like systemic issues in our nation that need to be solved. And now we're importing Indians, and Vivek is supposed to be the example when he's so out of touch with our culture and what we are and what we want. Not only that, but he scammed his entire base with his pump and dump pharma scam. I mean, Indian and scammers, I'm not going to make a comment there. But look, this guy doesn't get it. Doesn't mean all Indians don't get it. I know many Indians who do. It doesn't mean all Indians are bad. But even the Indians that were here in small numbers are mad about the current immigration policies, are mad about what was going on because they came here because they wanted to assimilate into Western culture. What is Western? It's European. It's white society. We've let other people in, but when we're not white, when we're not European, we aren't the West.
No,
we're just the
I'm
East.
sorry.
We are the
American
East.
culture is not about whiteness or preserving whiteness. It's about the values.
It was
the
created
country
by
was
white
founded
people, the
upon.
values of European white people, and other people liked that. Then live in
Why are
Chiang
you
Mai.
attaching values to people's skin color?
Because it's literally their values. So literally, it's
Anyone
European
can hold
Enlightenment
values
ideas.
or not hold
They
values.
can, but that's why they moved here. You're going to tell me that the
he's saying
original
that
people
other
didn't move here.
races have in-group preference.
Yeah, and people have come here and assimilated, but right now
And
what
white
we're
people
having
don't.
is we're not having very strict immigration from, let's say, an Asian country or an African country where you're like, okay, this person, obviously may have helped us in a war, they have given us intelligence, they care about our culture, they've lived in the embassy, they can come here. And I would say there has always been a benevolence of Americans that's not racist, that you're like, everyone knows it doesn't matter what skin color you are, what race you are, who is just an American. You've adopted and assimilated into the culture. The problem is that that's when we defined a culture, we had a culture, people wanted to be a part of that. If I liked France, what am I saying? Do I want to go to France so that I can become like the black guys from North Africa selling trinkets in front of the Eiffel Tower? No, you know what I mean. I like French culture, like white European, what they created, their culture. We can't play stupid here. That's what I mean.
The actual issue is that white Americans tend to have an out-group preference, but every other race in the world has an in-group preference.
But that's forced.
Why do you say that?
We're shamed
Because the
into
scientific
that.
study shows that.
You think
We're
white
shamed into
people
that.
dislike white people and prefer other races?
This is a long-known study. In the United States.
I find that hard to believe,
pull it
but
up
I'll
for
take
you.
your word for it.
Yeah, it's true.
It's true.
I'll just conclude this very simply because I'm not actually disagreeing with everything you're saying. What I'm saying is that what's happening now is that we don't have assimilation is not only not common, it's also not normal.
Peter Licari, PhD, but I can keep going.
Yeah, so it's like, but this is a trained idea, and I mean it's actual suicidal empathy. What it is that when we lose our core ethos, our identity, when you go to Brampton in Canada, I don't know if you've
another
been,
one.
it's insane. It's not Canada anymore. It is literally India. It's Hindustan, and I just want to remind people in this that it is. Listen, people are against colonization.
But you combine it with non-liberal white, you'll still get a net out-group preference.
Whites like colonization as long as it's in their own country and it's of their own cities. I always love that. Like, I hate colonizers. Okay, well then why don't we kick out all these non-white people? And they'll go, whoa, you racist.
So the issue largely, of course, that we recognize is there's a cultural problem. It's not a racial issue, but
Culture and race are linked to an extent, though.
I disagree.
Yeah, no.
I disagree.
You don't think French culture is linked to the French people? Like there is a genetic component of their disposition, the way that
America
they
is
behave,
different.
the way that they are. You don't go to the black city and see that black people and white people can get along, that we can be friends, but there is a distinct difference by even just their athleticism or the way they express themselves, or you don't see any connection.
Let me try and answer that. So of course there's like if you go to Sweden, everyone's tall, and if you go to Thailand, I've made the point, everyone's short. Those things do play a role in culture to a degree. However, if a Swedish person is born and raised in the United States in an American cultural family, they will largely just be American culture. The same is true for a kid who is
they're European.
No,
it's true
for somebody of African
I'm part
descent.
Asian, and I've got a mixed race parent, and I've got a full Korean grandmother.
That's kind of a bad example. Strand of race
Koreans do
essentialism.
no, because Koreans do it. We have an integrative society too.
The point
as well.
is there's a bit of nature and nurture, but largely nurture takes the forefront. The issue that we have in this country is that while we may recognize that as an American American country, there can be someone who I grew up with who's black, Asian, Mexican, or otherwise, and they love Christmas and they love baseball. We do the same things. We're good friends, and don't you dare insult my friend over the way they look. The problem is white Americans have a net out-group preference, meaning they tend not to like white people, but every other race has a net in-group preference, and that's going to create racial animosity to an extreme degree. Thanks for watching this clip from the Culture War podcast. We're live every Friday, 10 a.m. to noon, so subscribe and come hang out.